the capacity for new thinking and or turning old ideas into new applications has really never been more important. And I think our kids ought to recognise how deep their capacities for creativity are. People often think it's a rather vague term that can't be defined. I've spent a bit of time trying to convince people that you can define it. It's a process of having original ideas that have value. And it's the fruit of imagination. It's applied imagination. And it can be present, evident, developed in almost every part of the curriculum. Not just the arts, but in science, technology. The world is crying out for fresh thinking, new ideas. A second is compassion. Compassion is rooted in empathy. I mean, empathy is our ability to step into other people's point of view, to see the world as they see it, to try and take their perspective. And it comes from the same power of imagination, of seeing things away from our immediate circumstances. I think of compassion as applied empathy. It's, so to speak, the executive wing of empathy. It'd be one thing to empathise with somebody else's situation. It's something else to do something about it and to decide either to act on behalf of somebody or to prevent others acting against them. So compassion to me is fundamental to our ability to be together as communities. It's the sort of cultural glue that holds us together into communities. So active compassion to me is very important, and that begins with self-understanding, and it relates to mindfulness, which I think of as composure. I mean the ability to be centered in yourself. A lot of young people, and not only young people, all sorts of people, I think find themselves off balance in various ways. You only have to look at the figures for depression. According to the World Health Organization, by 2020, depression will be the second largest cause of disability in human populations. This is in a world that's growing materially better off all the time. What it points to is a spiritual deficit in our lives. And I don't mean that in the religious sense. I don't not mean it in a religious sense, but I don't mean it just in a limited faith-based way, whatever the faith happens to be. I'm talking about the sense of our internal energy, whether we feel balanced or out of balance, whether we feel whole or disjointed with ourselves. And the fourth one I'd mention is collaboration. We do live in school systems which are more and more based on competition and win-win and individualism. That's an agenda that's being sadly driven harder by the international league tables, where kids are competing against each other for limited places in other institutions, and schools are being drawn to compete with each other for limited resources, and countries are competing with each other for dominance in these league tables. And there's a place for competition, but there's a much more important place for collaboration, for seeing that we face common challenges and we're more likely to solve them if we work together rather than push against each other. All of these areas are actually rather subtle and complicated in themselves, and people need to be trained themselves to do it.